All right. It looks like we are back. And yeah, that was a long one there. It actually kicked me back all the way out of YouTube. So I'm going to see if I can get the live stream back up over there. All right. Anyway, that was what was going on with CNN, or CNBC rather. That's what they're seeing from the markets, back where we left off. Let's get into the big news of the day here, though. All right. Starting today with a tweet from Shoe on Head, because she looked at this thing from Steven Crowder yesterday, which I listened to yesterday, and said, "What a fucking ghoul." And then, of course, she had to go back and give the same picture that everybody gives every time Crowder does something that's even remotely controversial of, hey, remembering when Crowder got his shit rocked by a union man and stuck to owning college libs ever since. That's the only thing that most people remember about Crowder is the fact that he got punched by a union guy. And they bring that up every time he does something, even remotely truthful, too. Now, I went back and actually listened to that whole thing, the entire situation that that Crowder was doing. So, but anyway, that's the video of this. Now, I listened to this segment where he went and did this. So what he did is he had Tokunawa, one of his producers, come back and kneel on his neck the way that George Floyd's were. And they tried to recreate this as much as possible. Like, they actually sat and repositioned. They were looking at this through various camera angles. But yeah, he went back and did this. And then, of course, Shu had to come back out and point out the fact that it looks like from this selective angle that all of Chauvin's weight is over Floyd's neck, and that Tokunawa's weight is up over his heel. Which was addressed, by the way, on the live stream. I don't know if Shu actually watched and listened to this whole thing, or if she just picked one specific selective point to go off this. I fear the latter was true, but yes, they actually addressed the fact that he didn't have his weight up over Steven while he was on the ground, and they went back and repositioned the whole thing to make sure that this was as close to everything as possible. It's worth the watch if you can go find it on YouTube if it hasn't been taken down yet. Otherwise, you can go back. It's on the audio platforms and listen to at least the narration of it, which is what I did. I haven't watched the video of it, but I listened to the narration of it. And yes, they went to great lengths to make sure that this accurately represented what happened on the ground. And like, Steven talked the whole time. Yes, he was uncomfortable. Yes, he was immobilized, and yes, he was strained to talk. But he was able to get his head up and moving. He was able to, I mean, even when Tokunawa put his knee back down on his neck, Steven was still able to pick his head up, move it around, and talk while he was in there. He was talking the whole time. So, a lot of people got pissed about that too, which, coming from Newsweek, we'll see what's happening with that. Steven Crowder video recreating Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd sparks backlash. From Dan Cancian. Steven Crowder sparked backlash on Twitter Wednesday for suggesting he would get the producer of his show to kneel on his neck for 9 minutes in a not-so-subtle reference to George Floyd's death. "Today I'm going to test the theory and have my producer kneel on my neck for 9 minutes, live on concrete," Crowder told a former Fox News contributor tweeted. "No tricks, no cuts, we need to walk a mile in another's shoes." A black man, Floyd, died while in police custody in Minneapolis on May 25th last year after being arrested on suspicion of passing a counterfeit $20 bill. His arrest was caught on camera by a bystander whose video showed Officer Derek Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes. In the video, Floyd can be heard saying, "I can't breathe," and "I'm about to die," while two other officers pin him to the ground. Crowder's tweet was met by fierce criticism, with users describing it as incredibly sick and twisted and mocking him for being brave. Benji Backer says, "Well, this is incredibly sick, twisted, gross, and not conservative at all." Joe Walsh, "You're so brave." Several others, meanwhile, pointed out the experiment couldn't accurately replicate the circumstances of Floyd's arrest. Shane Hazel tweets out, "Guaranteed I could kill you by kneeling on your neck for 9 minutes, especially if you're cuffed. I don't agree with Steven on a lot of things. He got every right to try this. However, it's an extremely poor taste." Lauren Shen says, I understand the people saying the circumstances of the experiment aren't comparable to what happened to Floyd, pressure and positioning of his knee. I understand the people saying this is insensitive. I don't understand people saying this is racist. Oh, it's very racist. Crowder explained viewers complained when he carried out the experiment in the studio, so he decided to carry out the experiment on concrete. I don't expect this to be pleasant, but I think people need to see what it's like if someone is not in an agitated, overdosed state, he says in the video of the experiment he posted on YouTube, where he's flanked by 4 men dressed in police uniforms. Chauvin and the 3 other Minneapolis Police Department's officers involved in the arrest, Thomas Lane, J. Alexander Queuing, and Tao Thao, were all fired following the incident. Chauvin is currently on trial for Floyd's death and has denied charges of second and third degree murder, while his former colleagues will stand trial later this year after being charged with aiding and abetting second degree murder and aiding and abetting second degree manslaughter. And that's where this goes. Now, for Walsh's commentary to be accurate, and even for Shane Hazel's commentary to be accurate on this, which I can't believe for a second that Shane Hazel is taking the side of the police, but for any of this to be accurate requires intent on the part of Derek Chauvin. And we'll go over this with the rest of the trial stuff for the day as well, but with everything else that we're seeing off of this, I have yet to see intent brought forward. I see a lot of tear-jerking. I see a lot of people saying, well, this wasn't authorized, and this was wrong, and this has nothing to do with drugs, and Chauvin, he's a bad man. I have yet to see anybody come out and definitively prove beyond reasonable doubt intent. And furthermore, we'll talk a bit more about the drugs and what that means for reasonable doubt, but 2 of these charges require intent. And this whole thing, this whole experiment right here, thankfully, regrettably, it's going to be inadmissible in court, but that does cast reasonable doubt. There is reasonable doubt that this is the event that killed George Floyd. I hate to tell you this, but that's what they have going on with that. All right, let's look at what Yahoo has to say. Great, we disconnected. Everything's going to have to reload again. From Yahoo Entertainment, use of force expert, Chauvin used pain compliance technique against George Floyd. From Catherine Garcia. During the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin on Wednesday, Jody Steger, a use of force expert, testified that Chauvin used his body weight to pin George Floyd's neck to the ground for more than 9 minutes. Chauvin, 45, is facing murder and manslaughter charges in the death of Floyd, a 46-year-old unarmed black man who died on May 25, 2020, while being arrested on suspicion of using a counterfeit $20 bill. A bystander recorded the arrest, showing Chauvin with his knee on Floyd's neck, as Floyd is heard repeatedly saying he can't breathe. Steger, a sergeant with the LAPD and a witness for the prosecution, testified on Tuesday that Chauvin's use of force was excessive. In Wednesday's testimony, he said Chauvin was pressing down on Floyd with most of his body weight from the time Floyd was pinned to the ground to when paramedics arrived at the scene. Chauvin's attorney, Eric Nelson, asked Steger if images of the arrest showed that Chauvin's knee was actually sometimes on Floyd's shoulder, or shoulder blade area, or the base of his neck. Steger replied, it still looks like Chauvin's knee was near Floyd's neck, but Chauvin's weight could have shifted at times. Steger also said that when Floyd was handcuffed and pinned to the ground, Chauvin used a pain compliance technique that involves squeezing a suspect's fingers and manipulating their hands. Once the suspect complies with orders, the pain is reduced. Chauvin appeared to keep squeezing despite Floyd no longer resisting, and then at that point it's just pain, Steger said. So I didn't see any of that in the videos that I've seen, and I have watched the entire body cam footage. So I haven't seen the pain compliance technique to go along with this, but once again, we're sitting back at whether or not this is actually what happened or this is reasonable doubt. So something to see and something to watch with that. Let's grab one from CBS over here. Derek Chauvin trial, 4/7/21, forensic scientist found George Floyd's blood, pills with his DNA in squad car. From Aaron Donahue. A forensic scientist testified in the trial of Derek Chauvin Wednesday that she found George Floyd's blood and pills with Floyd's DNA in the squad car, where Floyd struggled with officers. Chauvin, who was seen in disturbing videos kneeling on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes, is charged with second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Mackenzie Anderson, a crime scene team leader with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, who testified that she photographed but didn't collect the pills when she first processed the squad car in May of 2020. She also found pills in the car Floyd was driving when she processed it at the same time. She then reprocessed the squad car at the request of the defense team in January of 2021 and collected and tested the pills found in the back seat, confirming they contained Floyd's saliva. Brianna Gillis, a chemist with the Minnesota State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, then took the stand. She said her testing found the pills in the squad car contained methamphetamine and potential other substances she could not identify. Prosecutors then called Susan Neath, a forensic chemist based in Pennsylvania, who also tested the pills. Neath testified that she was able to identify fentanyl as well as methamphetamine in the pills found in the squad car, but she said that the methamphetamine level was much lower than typical street meth. Both chemists found the pills in the car Floyd was driving and contained both methamphetamine and fentanyl, and were marked to look like pharmaceutical drugs. Court recessed for the day following their testimony. The testimony is significant because the defense has suggested that Floyd, who suffered from heart disease, died of a heart arrhythmia brought on by drugs he ingested and adrenaline. The prosecution argues Floyd died of oxygen deprivation beneath the pressure of Chauvin's knee. Earlier, LAPD Sergeant Jody Steger, a prosecution expert in tactics and de-escalation training, testified Chauvin used deadly force against Floyd. Steger testified he believed that no force was necessary once Floyd was handcuffed on the ground and no longer resisting. Steger testified Tuesday that in his view, officers used excessive force against Floyd during the fatal arrest on May 25th of 2020. My opinion was the force was excessive, Steger said. Steger's opinion was that the force was excessive. Steger was not on the ground with Floyd. And once again, two competing medical examinations. Which one gets admitted to court is going to be the key factor in this. And then once again, intent. But which one gets admitted to court is going to be the flip of the coin as far as whether or not the manslaughter sticks. Which is still not going to placate the people of Minneapolis, by the way. If it's just manslaughter, and Chauvin could actually probably get out in a year on good time served and good behavior at that point. If it's just manslaughter, then yes, they are still going to go back, and they're going to burn that city up. It is going to happen at this point, and really honestly, because I can't see second-degree murder. Murder with intent. I can't see that, because I have not been shown any intent off of this. And furthermore, I continue to see a reasonable doubt. That's the other thing to keep in mind when we're looking at this trial as well. Chauvin went into the courtroom on the presumption of innocence. You are innocent until you are proven guilty and judged by a jury of your peers. I know that right now the people of Minneapolis and the people of BLM would like to come back out and say that no, that's actually the opposite, and Chauvin is presumed guilty and his defense team has to prove him innocent, but no, they don't. He is presumed innocent. And if the prosecution can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Derek Chauvin went in and said, I'm going to kill you now, I'm going to put my knee on your neck until you die, motherfucker, in a crime of passion, or, furthermore, kill George Floyd while committing a separate felony, then those two charges are gone. I was really hoping that somebody on the prosecution side would actually bring me some sort of intent so that we could actually have something interesting. But this is going to come down to whether or not the manslaughter charge can stick, if the jury is not poisoned at this point. Because that's the other side of it. But the pills were in the car. They had his DNA on them. The blood is in the car. I don't know why the blood is in the car, but there is indeed blood in the car. I don't know if he was resisting against handcuffs or if he was coughing up blood or what the hell was going on with that. That actually could raise some reasonable doubt too if he was coughing up blood, because he was already having lung problems because of all the fentanyl before he ever got put back on the ground. Because it was in the squad car. Now, if it was in the ambulance, that would be a different story. But because it was in the squad car, and he was in the squad car before he was on the ground, before the knee went into the neck, that does raise some reasonable doubt to me. So we will see what happens with that. Let's see. I've got another one here from The Hill. Chauvin defense seeks to shift talk to Floyd drug use from Eris Folly and Michael Schnell. And we're actually going to watch this video in just a second because Posobiec put that out. But let's see what these guys have to say. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this one either because, it's pretty obvious why they're going to shift it to the drug use, because there is a good chance that that's actually what took Floyd's life and not the knee on the shoulder or the neck. Defense attorneys for former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin on Wednesday sought to make George Floyd's drug use a focal point of the 8th day of Chauvin's murder trial. The day featured a back and forth over whether Floyd, who died last May after Chauvin knelt on top of him for almost 9 minutes, said he ain't do no drugs or ate too many drugs as he was pinned on the ground. The defense also zeroed in on the potential influence bystanders at the scene had on Chauvin during the arrest, as well as the defendant's knee placement on Floyd while he was being detained. The day's proceedings featured testimony from Special Agent who led the investigation into Floyd's death, a use of force expert brought in by the prosecution, 2 forensic scientists who shed light on the evidence collected at the scene, and a forensic chemist. Chauvin is charged with second and third degree murder and manslaughter in Floyd's death, which set off a summer protest against police brutality and racism. So, and a lot of this is stuff that we're seeing. Let's look at this video, and then I want to weigh in on something. And we'll do the CNN article, then we'll go talk about infrastructure. But let's see what this video looks like. Jack Posobiec tweets out, breaking, Chauvin lawyer plays clip of George Floyd asks if he's saying, "I ate too many drugs." Alright, let's start that one back over.
You hear what he said?
No, I couldn't make it out.
Does it sound like he says, "I ate too many drugs"? Listen again.
I can't make that out, no.
I want to hear what you guys have to say.
I can't make that out, no.
What do you think? Because it does sound to me like he says, "I ate too many drugs." So, more reasonable doubt to this one. Before we do the CNN, I just kind of want to weigh in on this because there have been a lot of mixed opinions about what happened here, whether or not Chauvin is presumed innocent or guilty coming into the courtroom, and what the role of this is. Now, once again, I know a lot of people in the chat don't like police officers under any circumstance whatsoever. I have a slightly different view of policing because of my rural upbringing and the fact that I get to vote for a sheriff instead of a city-appointed police chief. As most of you who live in the city do see, a city-appointed police chief who is not beholden to the people but is beholden to the city. So I do look at policing a little bit differently, but as far as where Chauvin is going right now, we need to stop looking at him as a police officer and look at him as a private citizen on trial for murder. Now, the fact that he is a police officer versus a black man is going to taint all of this, but once again, this comes down to the fact that Chauvin is coming into the courtroom innocent until he's proven guilty and judged by a jury of his peers. And if he gets any sort of different treatment by the court system, which works under DOJ, a state DOJ that for many of you is run by Democrats, and a federal DOJ that is also run by Democrats right now. If they go in presuming him guilty, and the defense has to prove innocence, what do you think that means for the rest of us? What do you think that sets as a precedent? It takes away the innocence until proven guilty, the presumed innocence. And, now once again, the police, your local police, can come down and, hey, you're being libertarian and you're being a a nuisance to the state. You're doing everything you can to try and break up the duopoly. Hey, I think I might have found some drugs on you, and hey, they're still illegal on a federal level. So, hey, why don't you come in here? Now you have to come back and prove your innocence. This is pivotal. This case is pivotal. And if the prosecution can't bring forward a good case, then the jury does not have any obligation to put Derek Chauvin in a cage. Because right now he is representing the rest of us versus the government. So I do want you to keep that in mind. Yes, he was a police officer, and yes, I know a lot of you have a complicated relationship with the police. I'm a car guy. I understand that entirely. But furthermore, this case goes down to the presumption of innocence and reasonable doubt, which is most likely going to be, if Chauvin walks, what he walks on is reasonable doubt. So I just want you guys to remember that as this goes forward. All right, last one on this from CNN. Lead investigator in Derek Chauvin case changes mind about what George Floyd said in video. From Eric Levinson. The special agent who led the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension investigation into George Floyd death struggled to make sense of a short phrase Floyd said last May as Derek Chauvin kneeled on him. Senior Special Agent James Ryerson was shown a clip from Minneapolis police body camera footage of Floyd saying something while handcuffed in the prone position on the ground. Did it appear that Mr. Floyd said, "I ate too many drugs"? Defense attorney Eric Nelson asked Ryerson. Yes, it did, Ryerson said. After a short break, the prosecution played for Ryerson a longer clip of the video that provided the lead up to the comment. Having heard it in context, are you able to tell what Mr. Floyd is saying there? Prosecutor Matthew Frank said. Yes, I believe Mr. Floyd was saying, "I ain't do no drugs," Ryerson replied. The testimony came on the 8th day of Chauvin's criminal trial, as several investigators and forensic scientists testified about what they found at the crime scene, including Floyd's bloodstains and a few white pills containing fentanyl and methamphetamine. Earlier in the day, the LAPD use of force expert hired by the prosecution testified that Chauvin had used excessive and deadly force on Floyd when none was needed. Throughout the trial, jurors have been closely watching and at various points taken notes on much of the testimony, according to pool reports from inside the courtroom. However, the pool reports indicate that some jurors' attention flagged during the BCA investigators' testimony on Wednesday. This week's testimony has featured several police training experts who have countered the defense's argument that Chauvin did exactly what he had been trained to do when he restrained Floyd. Prosecutors have sought to show Chauvin used excessive and unreasonable force on Floyd and had a depraved mind without much regard for life. Well, once again, you've got to show me intent. You have got to show me that Chauvin went in there and said, "You fucker, I've dealt with you for the last time. Die, you motherfucker." Or at least said that to himself in his internal monologue, which, once again, I have yet to see anything for that. So, a few different things going on Thursday. On Wednesday. We will continue to watch this trial because, as you can see by the rest of the news stack here, they're trying to jam a bunch of other shit in there so that you guys don't pay attention to the trial and just pick up the selectively edited clips from the courtroom instead of watching what's actually going on with this trial. All right, let's keep going. Let's start with this tweet from Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is a senator to at least one person in the chat, and you know who you are. Paid leave is infrastructure. Childcare is infrastructure. Caregiving is infrastructure. Also, computer mice are infrastructure. Fountain pens are infrastructure. Contemporary is infrastructure. But this is right now going in and trying to push the pork that they're trying to jam into this bill so they can get it through budget reconciliation and justify that to the American people so they don't have to get any Republicans back on board. All right, let's see what the New York Post has to say. Unicorns are infrastructure. Senator Gillibrand is mocked for definition of Biden plan. By the way, before we go on to this, I just want to remind you that Freckled Liberty got on here, who is a member of the Freedom Scoop media group, pointing out the fact that LMAO, bitch, no they aren't. Thought you guys would like that. This is from Tamar Lapine. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand on Wednesday tried to redefine infrastructure and got torn down on social media for it. Infrastructure is generally defined as basic physical and organizational structures and facilities, such as buildings, roads, and power supplies. But in a push for President Biden's massive $2.3 trillion tax and spend plan, the New York Democrat attempted to pave a new meaning, tweeting, "Paid leave is infrastructure. Childcare is infrastructure. Caregiving is infrastructure." The message drew a wall of mockery. Unicorns are infrastructure. Love is infrastructure. Herpes is infrastructure. Everything is infrastructure. Daily Wire founder Ben Shapiro wrote on a tweet. I just missed a perfect opportunity to use the Shapiro voice. Come on, gang, okay? Unicorns are infrastructure. Love is infrastructure. Herpes is infrastructure. Everything is infrastructure. Journalist Josh Barrow joked that mayonnaise is infrastructure and supports other flavors in the sandwich. The bread is also infrastructure, Barrow added. That's actually, as far as the sandwich goes, that's actually fairly accurate. But not in the case of what we're seeing going on around the country as far as the infrastructure plan. But the meat and cheese and tomatoes are not infrastructure, and making the sandwich is not infrastructure, but the plate is infrastructure. That's also technically true. Many users noted, if everything is infrastructure, then nothing is infrastructure. Now, it's very fun to mock what Gillibrand said because Gillibrand is kind of an idiot. She's kind of dumb. But I do want to get to the core of what came out of this tweet, and that's what I said over at when we looked at the tweet itself. At the core of what's here is the fact that they're trying to redefine everything. It's newspeak is what it is. They're trying to redefine everything back as infrastructure because they're going to try and jam every bit of it into the infrastructure bill so they can get it passed on budget reconciliation. They're coming out straight out admitting to you that this isn't about building roads and bridges and Amtraks and buildings and shit like that. This is about finding a way around the filibuster. This is a way to jam their agenda through with budget reconciliation because they can't get Sinema on board. Which I would love to see it if Sinema looked at this and said, oh, you're going to try and jam this shit in? Fuck you, I'm not voting for this either. This is something you have to pay attention to. You really do. Because if you don't, they're going to try and continue to do this on the third budget reconciliation they get next year. This is important. And Gillibrand is coming out and saying the quiet part out loud. Yes, don't read the bill. We're just going to put in there whatever the hell we want, and we're going to try and jam it through without Republican support. This is what the government's going to try to play on. They're trying to get their agenda through. They hope that with a 50-50 majority, they could change and get rid of the filibuster, and they realize that they can't. So that's what they have to say. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about Matt Gaetz. Gaetz' alleged extorter confirms he wanted $25 million, denies shakedown. From Ron Blitzer. Bob Kent, one of the men Representative Matt Gaetz claims was behind the extortion attempt in connection with allegations of sexual misconduct involving underage girls, admits that he asked Gaetz' father for $25 million, but insists it was not extortion. In an interview on Sirius XM's The Michael Smerconish program on Monday, Kent said that he needed the money to help locating missing FBI agent Robert Levinson, and he had heard that Gaetz was under investigation, so he saw an opportunity that could have been mutually beneficial. Matt Gaetz is in need of good publicity, and I'm in need of $25 million to rescue Robert Levinson, Kent said. Levinson's own family presumes him to be dead after he disappeared in 2007. Kent claims he's seen video evidence that leads him to believe that Levinson is alive in Iran. Kent, who says he's now a consultant after working in Air Force intelligence, acknowledged that he met with Gates' father, Don Gates, and asked for the money. And right there, on the investigation, I see reasonable doubt. Once again, going back to, you are innocent until you're proven guilty, but I've got reasonable doubt sitting here saying that, oh, well, this guy was just going to make this go away, so, I mean, is there actually anything there to see if he could actually make it go away? Do we know that the DOJ is just running up and trying to go off and say, hey, go help this guy out and give him a bunch of money, or we're trying to get rid of you because you weren't Trumpy enough, or whatever the hell else it was the DOJ was doing? Or is there actually some substance here? And I don't know if there is or is not substance to this. If there is substance to it, if Gates did traffic a minor around the country, then throw his ass in a cell and throw away the key. But you're going to have to prove that in front of a jury of his peers. Actually, you're going to have to impeach him first and then prove that in front of a jury of his peers before any of that can be seen. But honestly, really, looking at this, I almost see the impeachment would be the goal. Just to get him up out of office and then, oh, well, we couldn't get this in front of a grand jury. Sorry. Well, enjoy your life as a private citizen, sir. So that's what we see going on with that. Let's see what the New York Post has to say. Speaking of people who did grody things while in office, judge dismisses Katie Hill lawsuit against Daily Mail over nude photos. Please forget the fact that Katie Hill got kicked out of Congress for banging her fucking staff. It's all about nude photos. All right. Nude images of Katie Hill were in the public interest when they were published by the Daily Mail. A Los Angeles judge ruled on Wednesday in dismissing the ex-congresswoman's lawsuit against the media outlet. LA Superior Court Judge Yolanda Orozco said the photo spoke to Hill's character and qualifications for office, which she left in October 2019, less than 1 year into her first term, according to a ruling obtained by the LA Daily News. The Mail's website published the pics days before the California Democrat resigned amid intense scrutiny over her three-way relationship with her husband and a female staffer and an alleged affair with a legislative aide in her office, which sparked the House Ethics Committee probe. Here, the intimate images published by the Daily Mail spoke to Hill's character and qualifications for her position, as they allegedly depicted Hill with a campaign staffer whom she was alleged to have had sexual affair with, and appeared to show Hill using a then illegal drug and displaying a tattoo that was controversial because it resembled a white supremacy symbol that had become an issue during her congressional campaign, Orozco wrote. None of this matters. None of it matters, and I guarantee you if I run for office, you guys are going to see a picture of my junk. Because somebody out there has it saved. Because I used to not be as intelligent as I am now, where I say that shit's not getting sent out anywhere. Somebody's got that saved, and it's going to show up when I run for president to try and discredit me. Just preparing you guys for that. It is indeed going to happen at one point, but once again, none of this has to do with whether or not Katie Hill got kicked out of Congress. She was on an ethics probe because she was boinking a fucking staffer, which is against the rules. But once again, they're going to continue to come out and try to say, well, this is just sexual harassment because my husband leaked these photos and he's the reason I got out of here and that's why I divorced his ass. The husband got a handsome payout for this to try and take the eye off the fact that she was stuffing her staff. All right. So that's what we have to see for that. Let's grab one from Politico. Capitol riot defendant alleges beating by jail guards. From Josh Gerstein and Kyle Cheney. Tensions are running high between guards and inmates at a D.C. jail housing many of the defendants in the January 6th cases, with at least one of these prisoners alleging that he was brutally beaten by correctional officers. For weeks, the Capitol riot defendants being held in Washington have complained that they are locked in their cells with virtually no human contact for 23 hours a day, But a startling graphic account offered by publicly in a court on Tuesday by one such inmate, Ronald Sandlin, went further, alleging that guards have subjected those charged in the January 6th Capitol Selfie Fest to violence, threats, and verbal harassment. Myself and others involved in the January 6th Selfie Fest are scared for our lives, not from each other, but from correctional officers, Sandlin said during a bail hearing conducted by video before U.S. District Court Judge Dabney Friedrich. I don't understand how this is remotely acceptable, he added, saying that he was being subjected to mental torture. In an unusual direct plea to the judge, Sandlin said another Capitol riot defendant, Ryan Samsel, was severely beaten by correctional officers, is now blind in one eye, has a skull fracture, and detached retina. Sandlin also described racial tension between minority guards and largely white defendants. Oh, really? Some of whom have been publicly accused of membership in or association with white supremacist groups. Sandlin said guards tackled to the ground one high-profile prisoner, Richard Barnett, 60, who was photographed with his boot on a desk in Speaker Pelosi's office. Sandlin said one of the guards declared, "I hate all white people and your honky religion." The three defendants raising alarms are charged with a wide range of crimes related to the Capitol breach. Selfie Fest. Sandlin, who posted images of himself smoking a joint in the Capitol Rotunda, is accused of tussling with multiple U.S. Capitol police officers, guarding the Senate chamber, and trying to rip the helmet off of one of them. Samsel, who's currently on parole in Pennsylvania and is wanted for an unrelated alleged assault in New Jersey, is charged with toppling barricades on top of police officers, telling one, "We don't have to hurt you, why are you standing in our way?" Barnett is charged with entering the Capitol armed with a stun gun, entering Pelosi's office, and putting his feet on the furniture, as well as stealing a piece of mail from her office. Defense attorneys for Samsel and Barnett confirmed the episode, as described in court by Sandlin, which they said they learned about from their clients, family members, and other attorneys. There is a pattern of abuse and targeting of the defendants who are being held pursuant to what happened on January 6th, said Joseph McBride of New York, a defense lawyer for Barnett. It is targeted, it is ruthless, it is nonstop. And this is all getting to be political, too. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but it does raise suspicion, especially, I would have to see the staff rolls to see what the level is of minority guards versus the white prisoners that are sitting in and either awaiting trial or awaiting sentencing. I'd have to see the rolls to actually make a definitive decision as to whether or not I would believe this is happening or if this is people trying to get out of jail early, which is another thing to consider as well. But the tensions are high right now. And as far as I know, these people are all also being held in D.C. I do have to ask, though, is there also going to be camera footage? Is there, I would imagine that in a police station there would be plenty of surveillance footage that you could see and corroborate all of this. But something definitely to look into because, once again, you're innocent until proven guilty. And the state shouldn't be able to coerce themselves onto you like this. So I would definitely love to see a follow-up to this. But as right now, I don't know. I don't know if this is true or not. And I'd love to see it followed up and investigated. All right, let's read another one from The Hill. Patagonia to donate $1 million to Georgia voting rights groups. From Joseph Choi. So I guess Patagonia got a lot of people pissed off yesterday. And we'll talk a bit about what's happening with that. But I didn't know what Patagonia was until yesterday. So I don't know how much money they actually have to give to this voting group, but they've apparently got $1 million for it. Outdoor clothing company Patagonia announced on Monday that it would donate $1 million to multiple voting rights groups in Georgia in direct response to the restrictive voting legislation that recently passed in the state. In a press release, Patagonia celebrated the record amount of voter turnout seen in the 2020 election, reiterating that the assessment made by many voting officials that they were safe and secure elections. Safest election ever in the history of man. Joe Biden is the most popular president that ever lived. Everybody loves Joe Biden. Everybody loves everything that he's doing. He got 80 million votes, much, much more than his predecessor Barack Obama, who was even less popular than Joe Biden. Everything is above board, honk. But instead of celebrating democracy in action, a group of lawmakers in Georgia and states across America are doing everything in their power to make it harder for their constituents to vote. Patagonia CEO Ryan Gellert said. He followed that up by saying, "Please buy my stuff. Please buy my crappy overpriced clothing." Protecting our democracy is an all-hands-on-deck commitment that's ongoing. Standing in solidarity with black CEOs and business leaders, I call on fellow CEOs to join in denouncing these attacks on our democracy and to do more than make corporate statements, Gellert continued. Gellert stated that the $1 million donation would be divided equally between the Black Voters Matter Fund and the New Georgia Project. Gellert called on fellow business leaders to do three things: fund voting rights activists, launder money, send a letter to politicians calling on them to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and spread the message through their various business partners. And that wasn't the only thing that Patagonia did yesterday. So, reading from Fox Business. Patagonia cheers MLB fleeing Georgia over voting law while continuing China operations, despite Uyghur abuse. That's right, they're making their crappy, cheap clothing over in China. This is from Sam Dorman. Outdoor clothing company Patagonia is praising MLB for pulling its all-star game out of Georgia, while it continues to make and sell clothes in a country that brutally represses religious minorities. In a statement on Monday, Patagonia CEO Ryan Gellert urged other business leaders to commit to reaching out to business partners to facilitate speaking out against further state laws that could restrict voting access. Under that objective, he said, MLB has pulled the All-Star Game from Atlanta, and we need more businesses to take a stand, and we can use our own business networks to expand our advocacy. Opting to stay silent while the constitutional rights of voters in Georgia and across our country are being threatened is tantamount to supporting these unjust laws. Never mind the $100 million that MLB just fucking pulled out of Atlanta. Never mind all that. You know, those business leaders were definitely looking forward to having that money come in, so they could pay off their houses, buildings, business expenses, and never mind all that bullshit. We have voting rights to fight for. Fuck the little guy. Meanwhile, Patagonia owns a store in China's capital, Beijing, and has a number of other facilities in the repressive nation. When contacted, Patagonia referred Fox Businesses to its statement last year about exiting Xinjiang, where reports have surfaced of horrific detention and persecution of Uyghurs. The company said it was horrified by the report. In accordance with guidance from the Fair Labor Association, we are actively exiting the Xinjiang region, said Kara Chacon, Vice President and Social and Environmental Responsibility, in July. So, they say they're getting out, but they're still making a bunch of their bullshit in China. They say that they want to give a whole bunch of money to black activist groups. And they praise the MLB for bringing $100 million out of Atlanta, out of the hands of small business owners and community leaders in Atlanta. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Let's keep going. I guess we still have a bunch to get to. From CNN, Atlanta mayor issues order to mitigate the impact of Georgia's new voting law. From Diane Gallagher and Paula Blanc. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms issued an executive order Tuesday that directs the city's chief equity officer to implement a series of actions to mitigate the impact of Georgia's new election law, imposing a series of voter restrictions. The city of Atlanta does not have the authority over state election law, so the administrative order cannot change any of the new requirements. Most of the actions focus on voter education and staff training to better assist Atlanta residents with information on the new law changes or how to obtain the necessary identification. This administrative order is designed to do what those in the majority of the state legislature did not: expand access to our right to vote, Bottoms said in a statement. Let's see. You've expanded mail-in voting. You've expanded early voting. You've expanded voting hours. And yet you're still restricting the ability of people to vote. Now, I will give Lance Bottoms some credit to this. Because with the way that the Georgia State Charter is written up, no, Keisha Lance Bottoms cannot override the state's new voting laws. So she is providing educational opportunities to make sure that everybody has the voter ID. That is the way, if you do want to combat this and you think that this is a problem, that's the way to do it. Especially if you think that people of the same skin color as you are too dumb to get an ID or too poor to get an ID. Which is what you're telling me is what you believe, by the way, when you make a statement like this. So yes, this is actually the right way to do this. But even still, it comes to the point of the bigotry of low expectations. And you're going to come out here and tell me that, well, my constituents are too dumb to go out and get an ID. So that is the way to do it. And we'll see what goes on with that. All right, let's keep going. From Newsweek, David Chipman, Biden's gun czar, says Second Amendment requires well-regulated guns. Well, my guns are very well regulated. I take them apart and clean them once a month. David Chipman, President Biden's expected nominee for director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, which should be a convenience store, penned a January 24th opinion article declaring that Constitution's Second Amendment envisions firearms as being well regulated. Chipman's article, printed in the Roanoke Times, criticized local governments in Virginia that responded to state legislative firearm reform efforts by declaring themselves as Second Amendment sanctuary counties. These county sheriffs and local officials claimed that the Constitution allowed them to block any laws that violated gun owners' freedoms. Yes, that is fact-check true. The Second Amendment envisions firearms as being well regulated, and individual sheriffs aren't entitled to decide whether a particular regulation is constitutional. That's the job of the courts, Chipman wrote. Yes, but it is their job to decide whether or not they're going to enforce it. He said that the state's legislature's proposed reforms would prevent violence rather than take guns from responsible, law-abiding owners. He also accused local sheriffs and officials of stoking fears, spreading lies, and valuing unregulated access to guns above the lives of their neighbors. Well, I value unregulated access to guns for the lives of my neighbors, so that when your bureau, the ATF, comes in and kicks in their fucking door, they at least have a 50-50 shot. Now, there's a 50% chance that the homeowner loses his life. Actually, it's probably closer to 70 because the ATF is going to come in with 100 fucking people when they decide to do something like this. But at least the dude's got a chance. The Second Amendment states a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. While some interpret the term well-regulated to mean capable of fighting, others argue that it means controlled or supervised to conform to rules. Chipman's expected nomination on Thursday will likely coincide with Biden's plan to sign executive orders meant to address gun violence following a wave of mass shootings that nobody talks about because of the skin color of the perpetrator. They're great for statistics, but they're bad for the narrative. All right. Speaking of which, let's talk about that. From Politico, Biden to unveil long-awaited executive action on guns. This is going to go well. From Anita Kumar, President Biden will unveil a package of executive actions to curb gun violence on Thursday, a step that's likely to be cheered by increasingly impatient advocates despite being relatively modest in scope. The announcement will come nearly 3 months into Biden's term, a delay that has frustrated activists who want the president to fulfill a campaign pledge to take action on gun violence on his first day in office. That frustration only grew after a slate of mass shootings in Colorado, Georgia, and California. The president will not wait for Congress to act before the administration takes its own steps, solely within the administration's authority and the Second Amendment to save lives, a senior administration official told reporters Wednesday evening. Among the actions Biden will take to direct the Department of Justice to begin, within 30 days, the process of requiring buyers of so-called ghost guns, homemade or makeshift firearms that lack serial numbers, to undergo background checks, and within 60 days, regulating concealed assault-style firearms, according to the White House. I don't have any fucking ghost guns. What the fuck are you talking about? Prove it. Prove it. More than 100 House Democrats wrote to Biden last week, urging him to take action on the concealed assault-style firearms, which is similar to the one used in the Colorado shooting, which 10 people were killed. Allahu Akbar. Biden will also direct the Department of Justice to provide states within 60 days with proposed red flag legislation that would permit courts to order the temporary removal of firearms from a person who may be a danger to themselves or others, and issue a comprehensive report on firearms trafficking, according to the White House. That's going to be the big one right there. That is going to be the strip of your due process. Oh, hey, you have a Gadsden flag in your house. You might be a danger to others. See those firearms? Yeah, we're just going to take those. Hey, you said fuck the government one day. You might be a danger to others. We're just going to take those now. You let your faucet drip. You might be a danger to others. We're going to take those firearms now. You see where this goes? That has been my biggest problem with red flag legislation. Now, yes, I understand the fact that a guy who's imminently about to blow his own fucking brains out should probably have his guns taken away from him. The problem that I've always had is not the idea behind it. The idea behind it is a sound idea. The problem I have with it is who fucking decides. Who decides whether you are mentally competent and by what standard? They've never given me a good answer to that. Well, the government just decides. Well, how does the government decide? And you don't see how that could be possibly used against somebody? No, the base idea behind a red flag law is a good idea. I understand and respect the idea that they're coming forward with it. I just can't stand the idea of who decides. Who decides, and why does it have to be a government official who has a vested interest in making sure that its populace is disarmed? On Thursday, Biden will announce David Chipman, a longtime former ATF agent, we just talked about that, to be his nominee for the director of the ATF. The agency will play a key role in any executive branch action on guns. According to the White House, Chipman, who is a senior policy advisor at Giffords, a group advocating for firearms restrictions, did not respond to messages. So that's what's coming down the pipes right now by executive action, because nobody in the legislature will touch it, nor can they. All right, so that's one thing to see with that. All right, from the Daily Wire, Hunter Biden seems to justify his Ukrainian paycheck by saying he was fighting for Trump's buddy Putin. He was fighting against Trump's buddy Putin. From Luke Rosiak. Hunter Biden's memoir, billed as a recovering drug addict's acceptance of his mistakes and journey to inner peace, is instead laced with partisan rage, displaying a seething hatred for Republicans who he continues to blame for his problems. Yeah, he's a typical Democrat, all right. Just days after he last used crack, the son of the president viewed the prospect of leadership by those with different preferred policy positions as more frightening than a soulless life of depravity, saying Donald Trump's re-election is what he feared most, constituting a threat to democracy. As his father is getting ready to sign an executive action that gives him the sole authority to decide whether or not you are mentally competent to hold a gun. Yeah, threat to democracy. The son of the now president has been criticized for taking a lucrative position on the board of Ukrainian gas company Burisma, while his vice president father was deeply involved in the affairs of that country where corruption is rampant. Burisma proudly put a picture of Joe Biden on its website. Hunter admits that his 5-figure-a-month board fees were a major enabler during my steepest skid into addiction that allowed him to spend recklessly, dangerously, destructively, including using cocaine on a Burisma board trip. Yet he justifies his actions with partisan rhetoric, saying that Burisma was opposed to the direct interests of the most dangerous person in the world, Vladimir Putin, and still thinks it was unfair for Republicans to question his big money international deals. There it is. There it is right there. It's fine that I got $10,000 a month, or however the fuck much it was, because I'm fighting against the evil Putin who enabled the evil Donald Trumpler. And yes, like most Democrats, he comes out and he blames Republicans for all his problems. Alright, let's see how you guys like this one. United Airlines put out a video with a tweet saying, "Our flight deck should reflect the diverse group of people on board our planes every day. That's why we plan for 50% of the 5,000 pilots we train in the next decade to be women or people of color. Learn more and apply now."
Departure review is looking at the plate, everything checks good. We're going to just nav it out, then airplane set up for us to actually fly navigation all the way out for our nav departure. Captain, will you any special specific things you're going to do for me?
Thank you. That sounds great. It looks like a great day. Flight attendant said they'll be ready to go in about 15 minutes. So I think we're all done here on my side. Looks like we're pretty good. I think we're waiting on a couple bags.
Okay, great.
We're way ahead of schedule.
Good day. It's always good to be ahead.
Yep. Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. It is a 4-hour and 25-minute flight. We'll be going all the way up to 37,000.
Alright, so that's the video they have for this. I want to read from their statement, then I want to read from ABC 7 out of Chicago about this, and then I want to weigh in on this one because, you know, that's why I have the microphone, because I can weigh in on stuff. Chart an extraordinary course at the United Aviate Academy. Your dreams of becoming a pilot for United have never been more possible. Join our flight training academy and be part of the next generation of highly qualified, talented, and diverse United pilots. United expects to hire more than 10,000 pilots over the next decade. Now is the perfect opportunity to build your career. Where's the woke stuff on here? Because this is directly from the tweet. Today, United has one of the most diverse pilot populations of any U.S. carrier, with nearly 20% of our pilot group made up of women and people of color. We are working towards raising that number even higher by partnering with diversity-led organizations and continuing to remove gender and racial barriers. And we're going to one step further with plans for 50% of United Aviate Academy students being women and people of color to ensure our students reflect the diversity of the customers and communities we serve. It's a tired trope at this point, but you know who should be flying the plane? The most qualified person in the world to fly the plane. Not diversity hires. If a woman is the most qualified person to fly the plane, then yes, she should fly the plane. I don't see what the problem is with this, except for the fact that people aren't going up to apply for it. Get the outreach out there. Tell people to apply for this. Show them the benefits of working for United and see if they'll come on their own. I have no problem with any of these groups flying a plane, as long as they're the most qualified people. But to do this on an artificial diversity quota, kicking some people out of the academy and letting others in with lower scores, that makes me nervous. I don't care what's between the pilot's legs. I really don't. All right. Let's see. Diversifying the cockpit. United Airlines recruiting 5,000 pilots for new flight school. Half will be women, people of color. From Karen Jordan. I'm sorry. I got to go right back to that for a second. I really don't care who flies the plane as long as they're the most qualified people to do so. Have you know? And I've only flown 4 times. I do have to keep that in mind. So I do have a slight level of ignorance to go with this. But the last 4 times I was on a plane, the cockpit was sealed. I had no idea who was sitting in that seat. All I knew was that he could put the plane up in the air and put it back on the ground. That's all I needed to know. That's all I care to know. Especially because we're in a post 9/11 world and the cockpit is sealed. You don't even get to see the person sitting up there. The airline industry expects to recover from the pandemic in a couple years, and when it does, United plans to diversify the cockpit. It launched a flight school called United Aviate Academy with the goal of training 5,000 pilots by 2030, half of which will be women and people of color. I've had the pleasure of flying the Boeing 737 and the Boeing 777, and now the Boeing 787, said United Airlines pilot Gabrielle Harding. Harding said that while growing up in Detroit, she had access to programs that sparked an interest in flying, but she says many minorities are just not exposed to aviation. Well, that's what you need to do. Outreach. Go into these inner city schools that the Democrats that run these inner cities force the minorities to go to, and do outreach there. The fact that United has decided to reach out and diversify the cockpit more is wonderful considering the cities in which the United serves, said Harding. They are cosmopolitan, diverse urban cities. It was in my blood. There was never a moment I didn't think I was going to be a pilot, said Kevin Mack. Mack was a regional pilot for Delta Airlines for 5 years, but switched gears. This was that post-September 11th environment where the airlines were going into bankruptcy left and right, and they were all shrieking and laying people off, said Mack. Mack said that this recruitment effort by United is coming at another transitional time for the airline industry, and that a large number of pilots are nearing retirement. That's why United said it plans to break down barriers and give more aspiring pilots a more direct path to jobs. Applications are now being accepted into the United Aviate Academy website. So this is actually interesting, and I actually might be able to go and try one of my lifelong dreams. If they're opening up the diversity for it. I was talking about this on Twitter the other day because somebody put up a post of, if you had followed what you wanted to be when you were a kid, what would you be right now? And I would be a roboticist if I followed what I wanted to be. Robotics has always fascinated me. A mechanized industry, that's always fascinated me. The way to get the arms to move, to get all the joints to move together, and then actually making the robots that stand up and interact directly. And I loved Mega Man when I was a kid too. That's a big part of it. But once I started to get older and I started to look into actual real life paths, my actual dream was to be an airline pilot. I wanted to be a Navy pilot first and then an airline pilot, but that's what I wanted to be. But, this happened. And it was explained to me by the recruiter that you had to have perfect 20/20 vision. This was pre-LASIK too, by the way. You have to have perfect 20/20 vision in order to be a fighter pilot. And you also had to have it to be a commercial pilot, which I do not have 20/20 vision. I mean, look how fucking thick these things are. I don't know how well you can see that, but yeah, I'm blind. Very much so. I can't see crap without my glasses on. And I've never worn contacts either, so. But that was always my dream. And if they're opening up to the diversity, open it up to those of us who don't have perfect 20/20 vision. I promise I will go and get my eyes checked more than once every 4 years. But that's what's happening with the Aviate Academy. All right, let's do just 2 more, then we'll do a thing I like and a thing that I hate. Andrew Giuliani says he plans to run for New York governor. From Ivana Sarik. Yeah, Cuomo I don't think is making it another term. But the specific reason that I wanted to put this in is I saw this picture of Andrew Giuliani and I said, really? Exactly how long has Rudy known Sidney Powell? Tell me you don't see that. Tell me you do not see Sidney Powell's face in that kid. kid. Dude's probably older than I am. Tell me you don't see Sidney Powell in that. All right. Andrew Giuliani, the former Trump White House staffer and son of Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani, told the Washington Examiner he plans to run for governor of New York in 2022. Despite a flood of sexual misconduct allegations and a federal investigation into his handling of COVID-19 in nursing homes, Governor Andrew Cuomo is still expected to run for re-election next year. A Cuomo-Giuliani matchup would set up a clash between two of the most prominent political families in New York. Outside of anybody named Trump, I think that I have the best chance to win and take the state back, Giuliani told the Washington Examiner. I think I'm the right candidate, and this is the right time to help change New York State, and we've got a playbook that works, he added. It just shows how terribly Cuomo has run the state into the ground, and the truth is the Assembly and the state Senate is to blame as well. Giuliani's bid for the governor's mansion has been encouraged by conservative donors and political figures and would have the backing of former President Trump, a source tells the Examiner. Tell me you don't see Sidney Powell in that face. I'm sorry. I can't unsee it. All right, let's keep going. Last one, then we'll do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. China warns Washington not to boycott the Winter Olympics. I've got no author given on this one. China's government warned Washington on Wednesday not to boycott next year's Winter Olympics in Beijing after the Biden administration said it was talking with allies about a joint approach to complaints of human rights abuses. The Foreign Ministry spokesperson rejected accusations of abuses against ethnic minorities in the Xinjiang region. He warned of an unspecified, robust Chinese response to a potential Olympics boycott. The politicization of the sport will damage the spirit of the Olympic Charter and the interests of athletes from all countries, said the spokesperson, Zhao Lijian. I would do that in a Chinese voice, but Elaine says I'm not allowed to do that because I'll probably get thrown off YouTube for that. The international community, including the U.S. Olympic Committee, will not accept it. International community not accept this. Human rights groups are protesting China's hosting of the Games. Due to start in February of 2022, they have urged a boycott or other measures to call attention to accusations of the Chinese abuses against Uyghurs, Tibetans, and residents of Hong Kong. The U.S. State Department suggested an Olympic boycott was among the possibilities, but a senior official said later a boycott has not been discussed. The International Olympic Committee and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee have said that in the past they oppose boycotts. I'm going to start talking like Biden again because it's a thing, man. But let's be realistic here. The Biden State Department is not going to go against the wishes of Biden's owners. No, we love China now because Biden says it's okay. But they're talking about the boycott, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're just going to go in there and hang out with everybody and win a bunch of medals. And Uyghurs? What Uyghurs? All right. And that's going to be it for the news today. And the last thing we're going to do is a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, and head on out of here. Now, usually when I do a thing that I like, it's whatever TV show I'm watching or book that I'm reading or video game I've been playing off of this. But, I do like food too, a lot. I really do. And I was out shopping the other day, and I found this. And it is amazing. If you like energy drinks and have one every once in a while, usually I'll advocate to stick with Bang because Monster actually does make me crash really hard. But I tried this, and it's amazing. It is the right balance of flavor and tartness and sweetness and zero sugar too, so it fits on the keto diet. Monster Energy Ultra adds gold variety to lineup. Pineapple flavor available nationwide. Monster Energy, a brand of Monster Beverage Corp., Corona, California, announced its latest addition to Monster Energy Ultra family, Ultra Gold, inspired by the ancient Greek legendary libation Nectar of Ambrosia. Ultra Gold evokes the taste of biting into a ripe golden pineapple. Fact check true. But with zero sugar, the company says. We're thrilled to announce Ultra Gold to Monster Energy consumers. The Monster Energy's Chief Marketing Officer, Dan McHugh, in a statement said, Monster Energy fans deserve the best, and Ultra Gold certainly sets the standard for zero sugar energy boost. Containing 10 calories and 150 milligrams of caffeine in each 16-ounce can, Ultra Gold is a tasty pick-me-up to help increase productivity and encourage consumers to push past everyday barriers to become the best version of themselves. According to the company, Ultra Gold is made for the power players, the grinders, the weekend warriors, and anyone looking for that extra edge in their day without the added sugar it adds. It's really good. It is really good. It still makes me crash, so I don't drink it all that often. But it's really, really, really good. I'll stick with Bang for something that doesn't make me crash every fucking day. But it's really good. I suggest you try it at least once. Alright, now a thing that I hate. From Newsweek. Jordan Peterson reacts to Red Skull parody of him in Ta-Nehisi Coates' Captain America. From Saren Morris. I almost didn't cover this because I thought this was just absolutely fucking ridiculous. But I started hearing more and more about this, and this is... I mean, and I know, like, I see Steven in the chat over there, and I know that he's got a difficult relationship with Peterson, and I know most of my followers from the Bears do too, but this is just outright and horrifying. Jordan Peterson, the controversial psychology professor, podcast host, and author, has reacted to the comparison between himself and the villain Red Skull in Ta-Nehisi Coates' Captain America comic. On Twitter, Peterson shared scenes from Volume 9, number 28, comic, which was published last week, and said Coates has used a parody of Peterson's ideas as part of the philosophy of the arch-villain Red Skull. Peterson was made aware of the Red Skull scene when earlier this week, sociologist Nicholas A. Christakis quoted an article from The Atlantic that said, certain elements of our community are threatening to get people fired. Even if someone just poses a question or expresses a conflicting view, you're immediately labeled a problem, a white supremacist, and people will say, find out where they work. Peterson quote tweeted Christakis and said, would it be picayune to point out just how much the once admirable Atlantic magazine has helped develop this insanely bullying and self-righteous culture? Twitter user Didymus Seth replied to Peterson and said, contributors to The Atlantic like Ta-Nehisi Coates are moving into comics. Jordan Peterson let me know if any of this looks familiar and attached an image from Coates' Captain America comic. Coates previously worked on as the national correspondent for The Atlantic. In the comic, Red Skull seems to be discussing the 10 Rules for Life, playing on the title of Peterson's book 12 Rules for Life. To the side of the screen are titles such as Chaos and Order, Carl Luger's Genius, and The Feminist Trap. Peterson retweeted the picture from the comic and said, what the hell, man? Do I really live in a universe where Ta-Nehisi Coates has written a Captain America comic featuring a parody of my ideas as the part of the philosophy of the arch-villain Red Skull? And honestly, looking at this, I mean, I'm not surprised. These people are trying to take over the culture and ingrain the ideas into the minds of people. Now, just to go off this, the people that are opposed to Peterson, the people that are opposed to his ideas, or the people who've just taken what they've heard from whatever progressive cultist that they want to take their news from, don't want you to ever read Peterson for yourself. They don't want you to know what it is that he has to say. They want to control the flow of information. I found this out, actually, watching Twitch. There is a certain girl that I follow on Twitch, and I haven't really watched any of her. I haven't watched a lot of Twitch lately just because I don't have the time anymore like I used to. With doing contemporary, with doing the Rednet show, and everything else that I do now, I don't have the time to just sit and watch somebody play video games as much as because I really enjoy it. But there was a girl that I follow, and she's from Calgary, which is slightly south of where Peterson's from, and we were talking about accents, and she had asked if she has an accent. And I said no, that she doesn't. Now, this girl is very, very pan. She's, well, I'll just admit, she's insanely hot. That's the only reason that I watch her. But she's very pan. She's kind of one of those super progressives herself. But I suggested, and we were talking about accent, I said, well, I mean, you don't sound like the other big prominent Albertian out there that has the accent. And she asked who it was, and I said, it was Dr. Jordan Peterson, who she actually had never heard of before. And almost as soon as it was out of my mouth, well, off my fingertips because I was typing, as soon as it was off my fingertips, there was just a flood of comments coming in through the live chat saying, please, don't listen to Peterson. Don't listen to anything Peterson says. Don't even acknowledge he exists. No, please. He's like the anti-Artie. Just don't, please don't. And that's what we're seeing for this. This is actually a true parallel, which I kind of think that it is. I mean, the 10 rules for life I could see is maybe a stretch if it wasn't for Chaos and Order, Carl Luger's Genius, and the Feminist Trap going with it. This is pretty obviously a take on Red Skull and a way to call him a Nazi. That's all that they want to do. Instead of a horrific ideology that's set to kill millions of people and take over the world, we've got a particular psychologist who's very, very progressive in his own right, by the way. I've listened to his lectures. He's not a Republican by any stretch of the imagination, and he's definitely not libertarian by any stretch of the imagination either, but just a guy who comes out and tells you, take responsibility for yourself and clean up your room. These are evil white supremacist ideas to people like Ta-Nehisi Coates. And once again, trying to discourage people from looking into this for themselves. That's what I always say. Don't take my word for anything. If you think I'm full of shit about Peterson, go read him for yourself. Listen to him and read him for yourself. And tell me what you think of what he had to say. But I won't listen to anything you have to say unless you've actually read his books. Or listened to one of his lectures. I enjoy his lectures. I do. But once again, once it comes to, now they're going after Peterson and they're parodying Peterson. Who's next? Who comes back down next after that? The parody of Trump, which we've already seen. The parody of Lindsey Graham. Anybody else they deem undesirable. Maybe Owen Benjamin will get a comic book villain in Marvel somewhere so people know not to go and listen to him. Maybe then people attribute him to evil as well. It doesn't stop with just one. But this is what they're going to do. All right. And that's going to be it for the news for the day. And we're going to head on out of here. Let's throw some music up and let's go. Maybe, if the music player wants to cooperate. All right, so we're going to head on out of here for the day. Thanks everybody who came by and watched. And if you are just lurking right now, get those last minute messages in so I remember to come back and give you guys a shout out tomorrow, because I do read the live chat on Fridays, and shout out everybody who chatted throughout the week as well. I write your names down and I say thank you, heartfelt from the bottom of my heart. And thank you too for the host, to Stephen Ignoramus, by the way. I see that he was doing that, and also watching the chat and making sure you thank everybody else for following as well. That's awesome of you. Thank you. And other than that, we'll be back here tomorrow for more Contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.